I was lighting the last candle on the dining table when Ethan called out from the hallway, "Mom, do you want me to chill the champagne now?" His voice echoed through our quiet New Jersey home, clean and warm and filled with the smell of roast duck and cinnamon apples. Mark's favorite. "Not yet, sweetheart," I called back, smoothing the white tablecloth for the third time. "Let's wait until Dad gets here." But deep down, I already knew he wasn't coming. Today marked exactly 20 years since Mark and I exchanged vows in a tiny chapel near Montclair. 20 years since I traded a diploma in fashion design and a contract with a boutique in Soho for marriage, motherhood, and silent sacrifice. I had no regrets, or at least I told myself that often enough to believe it. Sophie, our 17-year-old daughter and my mirror image in both face and fire, walked into the kitchen, her phone tucked under her arm and her dark curls in a messy bun. "Do you want me to slice the fruit for the salad?" she asked. "Please," I smiled. "And use the good knives. This dinner matters." Ethan strolled in, tall like his father but with kinder eyes. "So, what time did Dad say he'd be here again?" he asked as he popped a cube of cheese into his mouth. I playfully slapped his hand. "Don't ruin your appetite," I said, masking the unease twisting in my chest. He said 7. The clock ticked louder than usual. By 7:30, the duck was perfect, the table glowing with silver and crystal, and the bottle of champagne still sealed in its ice bucket. By 8, I had called Mark 3 times. Voicemail. By 9, Sophie had grown restless, tapping her foot in sync with the ticking of the grandfather clock. "Mom, can we just eat without him?" she asked, arms crossed, eyes sharp with adolescent impatience. "No," I replied, too quickly, too firmly. "He's probably stuck at work." But even I didn't believe it. Ethan quietly poured me a glass of champagne and raised his own. "To you, Mom," he said softly, his voice carrying the kind of tenderness that breaks you. "To the best woman I know." So we sat, just the 3 of us, eating cold duck and warm memories while pretending everything was okay. By midnight, Sophie had gone to bed, kissing my cheek and whispering, "Happy anniversary, Mom," before disappearing down the hall. Ethan stayed behind to help me clean. "It's not the first time he's had a work emergency," he said, trying to reassure me. I nodded, but the ache inside me was heavier than any silence. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I heard the key turn in the lock. I had dozed off in the living room, still wearing my cream lace dress, makeup smudged under my eyes. Mark walked in like nothing had happened, no urgency, no apology. Just cold indifference, wrapped in an expensive coat. "You're still awake?" he asked, noticing me in the dim light of the standing lamp. "It's our anniversary," I said, standing slowly. "We waited for you." He walked past me, heading straight to the kitchen for a glass of water. The silence between us roared. "We need to talk," he finally said, not looking at me. "I've made a decision." My heart stopped. His voice was clinical, almost bored. "I think we should separate. I'm done, Grace." I stared at him, not processing. "You're... what?" "I'm moving out tomorrow," he continued, his tone flat. "You can keep the house, but I need the savings, the car, and the lake cottage. I've spent my whole life working for this family. I want to live for myself now." The words hit harder than any slap. My knees buckled slightly, but I forced myself upright. "Mark, what are you saying?" I whispered. "What's happened to you?" "Nothing's happened to me," he snapped. "It's you. You used to sparkle. You were curious, exciting. Now you're just a housewife. Always tired. Always in that bathrobe." His eyes scanned me with disdain. "You don't even try anymore." The humiliation burned like acid. I felt the tears pressing, but I refused to let them fall. "Who is she?" I asked quietly. His fingers drummed against the counter. "She's not the issue," he muttered. "How much younger?" I pressed, my voice trembling. 10 years? 15? 18, he admitted, looking me dead in the eyes. "Tiffany understands me. She supports my ambitions. She makes me feel alive again." Before I could respond, Ethan stormed into the kitchen in a t-shirt and sweatpants, hair tousled, fists clenched. "You're leaving Mom? On your wedding anniversary? Are you serious right now?" "Stay out of this," Mark snapped. "You'll understand when you're older." "I'm already a man," Ethan said, standing tall. "And if being a man means acting like you, then I want no part of it." Mark's face flushed crimson. He slammed his palm on the counter, knocking over the glass. "I've made my decision," he barked. "I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. And tell your sister that if she wants to stay in that expensive art school, she better stop taking after you." He turned and walked toward the door. "Mark," I called after him, my voice cracking. "What about your children? Do you even care what this does to them?" "They're old enough," he said over his shoulder. "Don't make me the villain, Grace. I'll still pay for tuition." The door slammed so hard the walls rattled. A porcelain figurine fell off the shelf and shattered on the hardwood, an anniversary gift from our 10th year. The sound echoed through the silence, just like our marriage had fractured. Too many cracks, finally one blow too many. Sophie appeared in the hallway, eyes wide, hair a mess. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. Why was he yelling? Ethan pulled her into a hug before I could answer. "We'll talk in the morning," he said softly. "He's not coming back." She blinked at me through tears. "He left us, didn't he?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Ethan wrapped his arm around me. "We'll be okay, Mom," he whispered. "Whatever happens, we're in this together." Sophie joined us, pressing her face into my shoulder. The three of us stood there, holding on to each other in the dim light of a broken home, while inside me, something crumbled into dust. But deep beneath the ruins, a flicker remained. Not hope, not yet, just a quiet, aching question. What now? The next morning, I woke to a house that no longer felt like mine. There was no smell of coffee, no humming from the kitchen, no familiar footsteps pacing the hall as Mark checked emails or muttered about traffic. Just silence, dense and unfamiliar, as though someone had vacuumed all the air out of the walls and left behind something hollow. I lay there in bed, still in the dress from the night before, my makeup crusted in the corners of my eyes, my mouth dry as dust. On the nightstand was the receipt, crumpled, half wet from a spilled glass, dated 3 days ago from a jewelry boutique in Manhattan. The name on the account, Mark Whitaker. The item purchased, a diamond bracelet. He hadn't just left me. He had left long before the anniversary. I just hadn't seen it. I pulled myself out of bed slowly, joints aching like I'd aged a decade overnight. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection startled me. My skin was blotchy, my eyes vacant, my hair matted in places I hadn't noticed. I splashed cold water on my face, but it didn't change anything. The woman staring back wasn't Grace Whitaker. She was a shadow. Somewhere in the house, I heard Ethan making breakfast. The clink of dishes felt like a lullaby from another lifetime. I shuffled toward the door, but only made it halfway down the hall before my knees buckled. I sank against the wall, my breath coming in short bursts. This wasn't heartbreak. It was collapse. The next few days blurred into each other like watercolors running in the rain. I didn't eat. I barely moved. Sophie would creep into the room with soup or tea, her voice soft, almost scared. Ethan handled everything else, the dishes, the laundry, the silence. I could see the fear in their eyes, the kind of fear kids feel when the strongest person in their life suddenly disappears while still standing in front of them. On the 5th day, someone rang the doorbell. Not once, not twice, but over and over with increasing intensity. I buried my head under the pillow, willing them to go away. But the knocking grew louder, and then came the voice. "Grace Elizabeth Whitaker, if you don't open this door, I swear to God, I'll call the fire department and have them break it down." Claire, my best friend since college, the one person who knew me before motherhood, before wifehood, before I shrank myself into someone manageable. Ethan opened the door. I heard the creak of it, the soft murmur of voices, and then the sound of heels, expensive, impatient heels, clicking across the hardwood floor. "Oh my God," Claire said when she saw me curled up on the couch, still in the same robe I'd been wearing for days. She didn't pause. She didn't ask for permission. She threw open the curtains, letting the sharp autumn light cut through the room like a blade. "Get up," she barked. "You don't get to rot. Not like this." "I don't want visitors," I croaked, my voice barely recognizable. "You don't need visitors," she snapped. "You need to wake the hell up." She began picking up clothes, clearing dishes, wiping counters. Her energy was infuriating and electric. She moved like someone on a mission, like someone who'd done this before, for herself or someone else. When she was done yelling, she sat down beside me and pulled me into a hug so fierce I couldn't help but cry. "You're not alone, Grace," she whispered. "But you have to fight. You don't get to let him win like this." Later that day, after she made me shower, change, and choke down 2 spoonfuls of soup, Claire stood by the window with her arms crossed. "I did some digging," she said flatly. "Your husband didn't just fall in love with some yoga instructor named Tiffany. He's been planning this for months, maybe longer." I looked up, confused. "He created a shell company in Delaware," she continued. "Started shifting assets out of your joint accounts. Transferred ownership of the lake house to someone named Carl Saunders, probably Tiffany's father or cousin. Sold shares of his firm to a holding company registered under a fake name. He didn't just leave you, Grace. He tried to erase you." I dropped the spoon. "How do you know all this?" Claire shrugged. "I have friends in real estate and construction." I asked around. I stared at the wall, cold seeping through my veins. "What do I do?" "You lawyer up," she said simply. "I've already called someone. We have an appointment in an hour. And after that, I'm taking you out." "I can't go out," I protested. "I look like a woman who's been through hell?" Claire interrupted. "Exactly. Let them see. Because you're not dead. You are not done. And if Mark thinks he can walk away with everything while you disappear into nothing, he has no idea who he married." An hour later, I was sitting across from a lawyer named Daniel Miller. Small, balding, precise. The kind of man who didn't smile much but had the eyes of a bloodhound. He reviewed the documents Claire brought, scribbled notes, and nodded to himself. "The situation is complicated," he said, "but not hopeless. 20 years of marriage. 2 children. If he thinks he can walk away clean, he's delusional." "I have nothing left," I whispered. "No savings. No income. No job. He took everything." Daniel leaned forward. "Then let's take it back. I'll work for a percentage. But we need evidence." I hesitated, then remembered the receipt and the account statement I'd pulled from our bank the night before. I slid them across the desk. He studied them carefully. "This is a start," he said, "but we'll need more. If you find anything, documents, emails, transfers, you bring them to me. Every detail matters." That night, Claire didn't let me go home. She took me to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the river. I hadn't eaten in days. The food didn't matter. The view didn't matter. But she insisted. And then the twist I didn't see coming. 2 tables over. Mark. With Tiffany. Her laugh was sharp and bright, echoing across the rooftop like a siren. She wore a diamond bracelet, the one from the receipt. And sitting beside her, like the world hadn't just exploded, was the man I'd once married. He looked thinner, older, but still smug. Still so sure of himself. I stood. My chair screeched against the floor. He turned. Our eyes met. And for the first time in days, I didn't feel grief. I felt something else. Fire. I don't remember walking out of that restaurant. 1 minute, I was staring into Mark's startled eyes, his mouth slightly open, caught mid-laugh. And the next I was outside, wind slapping my face like an insult. Claire rushed after me, her heels clicking across the pavement, breath visible in the October chill. "Grace, I swear, I didn't know they'd be there. We can go somewhere else." No, I said quietly, my voice steady for the first time in days. Now I know who's wearing my bracelet and probably sleeping in my bed. Claire looked at me, her eyes scanning my face for something. Maybe panic, maybe collapse. But I didn't break. Not this time. Let's go, I said, already moving. I know where we need to start. That night, we sat in the office of Daniel Miller. The evidence I had, bank statements, property transfers, that cursed receipt, wasn't enough. But it was something. Enough for him to begin tracing assets and filing an emergency petition to freeze joint funds before Mark moved more money out of reach. It won't be easy, Daniel warned. He's smart and clearly methodical. But 20 years of marriage still means something to the court. I nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. And you'll need income, Claire added bluntly, because legal battles don't pay for groceries. You can't stay frozen, Grace. You need to work. Work. The word felt foreign, heavy. My resume was a museum piece, a design degree from 20 years ago. No corporate experience. Nothing but years of managing a home, cooking dinners, raising children, and folding dreams into the back of closets. Still, I tried. The next few weeks were a blur of interviews and polite rejections. We're looking for someone younger. You're overqualified. We need someone with more recent experience. I heard them all, over and over. Every no chipped away at what little confidence I had left. Maybe a retail job? Ethan suggested gently one night, or call center work. I've applied, I said, feeling the bitterness in my throat. They all want 22-year-olds with glowing skin and unlimited energy. That evening, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by boxes. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe something to sell. Maybe something to remember who I used to be. At the bottom of a dusty trunk, I found it, a sketchbook, yellowed at the edges, full of fabric swatches and pencil drawings. Designs I dreamed up when I still believed in becoming someone. Next to it, my old sewing machine. A gift from my parents on my 18th birthday. I ran my hand along its surface, wiping away dust and time. And then, tucked inside the sketchbook, a photograph. Me, younger, eyes lit with hunger, standing next to a tall man with dark hair and a crooked smile. Behind us, a fashion show runway blurred in the background. On the back, in neat handwriting, to the best designer I know. My doors are always open. Julian West, my closest friend in design school. He had ambition, charm, and the kind of raw talent that couldn't be taught. I hadn't seen him in decades, but rumors of his success trickled through mutual friends. He'd gone to Milan, studied under legends, and eventually returned to the States to open a luxury atelier in the heart of Manhattan. Could he still remember me? The next morning, I woke up before the sun, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel heavy. I felt purposeful. Over coffee, I told Ethan what I planned to do. He didn't laugh. He didn't doubt. He simply placed a hand on my shoulder and said, I think he'll remember. Claire made a few calls. She had friends in high places, developers, boutique owners, people who whispered names like Julian West in circles with champagne and private galleries. He owns 6 ateliers, she reported the next evening. His main office is on Madison Avenue. And yes, he remembers you. I spoke to his assistant. You have an appointment. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. My heart thudded like I was back in school, waiting outside a classroom door. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing the hallway, staring at the clothes in my closet. Everything felt wrong, outdated, too tight, too loose, too irrelevant. I settled on a navy blouse and a pair of slacks that still held their shape. I brushed my hair, added mascara, and stepped into the cold air, praying I looked more like a designer than a ghost. Julian's office was inside a tall glass building that shimmered in the fall light. When I walked in, the receptionist gave me a polite once-over, then motioned me to a sleek white chair. My palms were sweating. Grace, His voice hadn't changed. I turned and saw him, older, yes, but still magnetic, silver at his temples, a perfectly tailored suit. His smile was cautious but real. "My God," he said, stepping forward. "After all these years, look at you." He didn't say, "What happened to you?" He didn't pity me. He just hugged me like an old friend would. We sat. We talked. I told him everything, not just about the divorce or Mark or the legal mess. I told him about the fear, about feeling invisible, about how I found my old sketchbook and realized I'd stopped believing I could create. When I showed him the photo, he smiled and ran a finger across the faded ink. "You were always better than all of us," he murmured. "And if you're here asking for help, you've already won half the battle." He leaned back, thinking, "I've just opened a new studio on the Upper East Side. It's mostly tailoring and garment fitting. Nothing flashy, but we're short-staffed. I could use an extra set of hands." I blinked. "I haven't sewn in years." "Like riding a bike," he smiled. "I'll have someone show you the ropes again. The rest, I already know you've got it." The next morning, I stood at a work table in a sunlit studio, surrounded by spools of thread, bolts of fabric, and the faint hum of sewing machines. My hands trembled as I picked up the scissors. My first stitches were crooked. My back ached. My fingers cramped. But I didn't stop. Day by day, I remembered. By the end of the second week, I could hem a silk gown in perfect silence. Julian would sometimes lean over my shoulder and mutter, "Still got it." At night, I collapsed into bed, exhausted but fulfilled. And for the first time in years, I was more than someone's wife. I was Grace Whitaker again. Julian had barely walked into the atelier that morning when one of the senior tailors waved him over, holding up a sequined evening gown with an impatient expression. I was pinning the hem of a blazer nearby, pretending not to listen, but I caught bits of their conversation. Something about client priority, and she's connected to the mayor's office. I focused on my stitches. My fingers no longer fumbled the fabric. Each movement felt sure, practiced. That alone would have made me proud, but what happened next changed everything. The tailor left, and Julian came over to my table. "We've got a situation," he said, not looking up from his tablet. "Our lead designer's out sick. One of the governor's donors needs a last-minute modification on a formal dress for tonight. I need you to take it." I blinked. "Me?" "You've done this 100 times in school," he said. "And frankly, no one else here knows how to improvise design anymore. You still do." I didn't answer. My hands moved before my brain did. I adjusted the bust line, restructured the waist seam, added a subtle asymmetry to the hem using leftover silk from another gown. It felt instinctive, like remembering the lyrics to a song I used to sing in the dark. I worked until my fingers ached, and when the client came for the fitting, she smiled. "This is stunning," she said, twirling in front of the mirror. "You've made it look like couture. Where did you learn to sew like this?" "In another life," I replied quietly. Word spread. Within days, Julian asked me to take on more custom pieces. Clients requested my touch, sometimes without knowing my name. And though I still stitched in silence, something inside me had begun to hum again. But while the atelier thrived, the legal battle stormed on. Daniel, my lawyer, called me into his office on a Wednesday morning. His face was grave. "Mark's playing hardball," he said, flipping through a stack of papers. "He's retained a top-tier legal team. They're delaying proceedings, burying us in paperwork, and trying to prove that most of the assets were never yours." I felt the weight of it press against my chest. Can he win? "He's slippery," Daniel admitted, "but not invincible. We just need more leverage." As if summoned by fate, that night I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Grace," a hesitant voice asked. "It's Tiffany." I nearly hung up. "Please," she said quickly. "I need to talk. In person." We met at a cafe in Hoboken, quiet, away from her Upper West Side glamour and my midtown work life. She looked thinner, less polished. Her skin was blotchy beneath her makeup. "I don't know why I am here," I said honestly, hands wrapped around my coffee cup. "You got what you wanted." Tiffany shook her head. "I thought I did, but Mark lied to me about everything." I didn't respond. "I'm pregnant," she said suddenly, eyes watering. "And he's denying it. Said I made it up to get money from him. He called me unstable, accused me of trying to trap him." I stared at her, numb. "I didn't come to beg," she continued, pulling a flash drive from her purse. "He left his laptop open one night. I copied what I could. I didn't understand half of it, but maybe your lawyer will." I hesitated, then took it. "Why give this to me?" "Because I see it now," she whispered. "What he did to you, he's doing to me. And I won't let him ruin another life, especially not my child's." Back at Daniel's office, the files unlocked a treasure trove. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, falsified contracts, digital signatures linking Mark to property shifts and business deals made while we were still married. "This," Daniel said almost reverently, "changes everything." The next court hearing was brutal. Mark showed up in a tailored navy suit, flanked by 3 attorneys. Beside him, Tiffany's seat was empty. I walked in alone, but not weak. Daniel presented the new evidence. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, requested a full audit of Mark's holdings. Mark's face twitched for the first time. Outside the courtroom, I was collecting my coat when someone blocked my path. "Grace," Mark said. I looked up. His eyes weren't cold, just tired. "I never thought you'd fight back," he murmured. "Not like this." I tilted my head. "You never really knew me, Mark." He took a step closer. "We could still fix this. I made mistakes, but maybe we could—" "No," I interrupted. "You made choices, and so have I." I turned and walked away. Julian was waiting outside in his car. As I climbed in, I felt something strange ripple through me, relief. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped losing. Over the following weeks, my role at the atelier expanded. Julian offered me a title, creative consultant. Clients began asking for design input, not just alterations. He even floated the idea of entering a competition, Emerging Designers of the Year. It sounded ridiculous at first. I wasn't emerging. I was resurfacing. Still, I started sketching again. Late one night, I showed Ethan my work. "These are incredible, Mom," he said, flipping through the pages. "Seriously, you should go for it." "I'm too old for this." "You're not," he said firmly. "And even if you were, so what?" Sophie agreed. In fact, she started helping me. Her eye for color, for balance, for detail. It was better than mine had been at her age. Working together brought us close again. We weren't just mother and daughter. We were 2 women building something from the same broken past. The competition date approached. My collection, titled Ashes and Thread, told a story in fabric, grief, survival, rebirth. Each piece mirrored a stage of healing, from muted, tight silhouettes to flowing, vibrant shapes that moved like breath. A week before the show, I received an email. Mark's company was being investigated. The offshore accounts, the shell contracts. Investors were pulling out. Business media was circling like vultures. Daniel called. He wants to settle. The terms were surprisingly generous. Half of all official holdings, plus retroactive spousal support, and my name removed from all debt obligations. "I'll accept," I told Daniel, "but I want it signed before the competition." He laughed. "You want a fresh start?" "No," I said. "I want to win without looking over my shoulder." The documents were signed just the night before the show. Clean, final, and freeing. The day of the competition felt surreal, like a dream you have right before you wake up, half floating, half falling, heart racing for reasons you can't name. I stood backstage in a simple black blazer and white blouse, the kind of outfit I used to wear when meeting Mark's clients or attending school board meetings. But today, I wasn't someone's plus one. I wasn't someone's mother first, someone's wife second. I was here as myself. Just Grace. Julian walked over, checking his watch. Your models are ready. You okay? I nodded, but my hands trembled. Just nervous. That's good, he said. Means you care. The runway buzzed with camera shutters and whispered judgments. Industry people in crisp suits, bloggers with neon hair, critics who had crushed designers with one sentence and launched others with a single phrase like, surprisingly fresh. Somewhere in the front row, I spotted Ethan and Sophie, both dressed to the nines, both smiling like I had already won. But just before the show started, I saw him. Mark. He sat alone, away from the other sponsors, thinner than before, suit hanging on his frame like it no longer belonged to him. His eyes scanned the room, then landed on the stage. For a moment they met mine, and I looked away. The music began, low at first, taunting. The first model stepped onto the runway in a tight charcoal dress with structured shoulders and a high collar. Constriction. That was the theme of the first look. The weight of silence. The pressure of sacrifice. The next piece loosened at the sleeves, hinted at color. By the time the fifth model emerged in a sweeping navy gown with slashed sleeves and a bold red lining that only revealed itself when she walked, the crowd had gone quiet. Focused. Listening not just with eyes, but with something deeper. The final look was a white dress, flowing, asymmetrical light. It caught the stage lights and threw them back in soft shimmer. It was the only piece in the collection that sparkled. Hope, renewal, self. The model paused, then turned slowly. And then I stepped onto the runway. I didn't plan to, but something inside me said go. Show them who did this. Who survived. The applause came slow, then faster, louder. I spotted Sophie wiping her eyes. Ethan standing, clapping so hard his hands turned red. Even Julian smiled from the wings, pride written across his face. When I walked off stage, breathless, shaking, the first person to meet me wasn't my kids or Julian. It was Mark. Grace, he said softly, holding a champagne flute like it might anchor him to the ground. That was unbelievable. Thank you, I said politely. He stepped closer. I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About us. I made so many mistakes. And maybe it's too late, but if there's even a chance— There isn't, I said, gently but firmly. There's no going back. You helped me become who I am now. But you don't belong in this version of my life. His face dropped. He wasn't angry. He wasn't surprised. Just lost. And I left him there. A week later, I signed the final divorce papers in Daniel's office. Everything was official, legal, done. Mark's assets were divided. I received more than I expected, including part ownership in a property I hadn't even known existed. He tried to hide it behind layers of paperwork. But the real win wasn't the money. It was the freedom. With part of the settlement, I partnered with Julian to expand his atelier. He handed me the title of creative director and told me the space next door was mine to use. For your own label, he said. You've earned it. We called it Grace Whitaker Atelier, a space filled with light, music, sketches, and laughter. Sophie interned with us, helping with color palettes and digital renderings. Her professors at the academy said she had an eye for storytelling and visuals, something no curriculum could teach. Ethan had just graduated from Columbia. He was working in tech, but still came by every Sunday for dinner. He brought his fiancée, a sharp and sweet woman named Naomi, who looked at him the way I used to look at Mark before it all dulled. One night, over wine and cheesecake, Ethan asked, "Would you design Naomi's dress? She wants something simple but unforgettable." I looked at Naomi. She nodded. "I'd be honored," I said, my voice catching a little. The following months were filled with joy I hadn't known my heart could hold again. The studio buzzed with new clients, new collections, new chances. Claire came by often, usually to eat all the biscotti in the break room and boss the interns around. "This is how life should feel," she said one day, leaning back on the couch in my office. "Like it's yours." And she was right. On the day of Ethan's wedding, I wore a pale blue dress I'd sewn myself. Sophie looked radiant in emerald green. Naomi's gown, simple silk, hand-stitched lace, a sweetheart neckline, and a flow that moved like water. Drew gasps when she walked down the aisle. I stood in the back, next to Julian, clutching a tissue and barely breathing. During the reception, Mark arrived. Late. Alone. He greeted Ethan politely. He didn't linger, didn't make a speech. And when we locked eyes across the garden tent, he raised a glass from afar and mouthed, "Thank you." And that was enough. That night, Julian found me watching the stars from the patio outside the venue. He sat beside me, his coat draped over my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm just full." He smiled, looking ahead. I had a plan for the next collection, but I think we should do yours again. A sequel." I laughed. "A sequel to Ashes and Thread." "Why not? You're not done rising." I turned to him. His eyes met mine, not as a business partner, not as a friend, but as someone who had waited patiently for me to find my way back to myself. And this time I didn't look away, because I knew who I was now. Not a wife, not a victim, not someone who vanished into someone else's dreams. I was Grace Whitaker, designer, mother, survivor, and I was just getting started. Sometimes the people who promise to love us forever are the very ones who try to erase us. And when they do, it's tempting to disappear, to shrink, to crumble, to believe the worst parts of their story about who we are. But the truth is, no one gets to define your worth but you. Grace didn't rise because someone saved her. She rose because she remembered. She remembered the girl who dreamed in fabric, who sketched with fire in her hands, who once believed she could create something beautiful. And when everything was taken from her, her marriage, her money, her sense of self, she stitched a new life from the scraps they left behind. So if you're standing in the ruins of something you thought would last forever, don't panic. Don't run. Breathe. Look around. And then start rebuilding. One piece at a time. Because sometimes you have to lose everything to remember who you were always meant to become. And that is the real story